This conference will now be recorded.
Kia ora, everybody, and welcome to the first session of Bubble Banter. So the idea of Bubble Banter, which is our new series, is that every Tuesday and Thursday night from 7 p.m, we will get together a few presenters. I just wanted to say hi to Josh.
Evening.
And hi to Reese. And these
Hi.
two will be helping me by answering a few questions and having a bit of banter with me tonight. So what we're covering in Bible Banter is Bible-based belief. Now, this is an 8-part series that was given to us by our brother Neil Todd, and our intentions are to show the need for an individual to have faith in the higher power, and we will use the Bible as our authority, hence the subtitle. So, Bible-based belief. Now, before we get started, I wanted to show you guys a couple of things for the Pakuranga Ecclesia. The first thing is this. It is our, oh, no, it didn't go, try again. So this is our Pakuranga Christadelphian website, and you can go to the website by going sites.google.com/view/Christadelphians, or you could just type Pakuranga Christadelphians into Google. Now, on the site, I'm going to draw some cool things. Oh no, my drawing tool's gone. Anyway, on the website, you can see a calendar down in the bottom left corner. So you can see when events are happening on GoToMeeting. And right in the middle there is a link that you can go to our GoToMeeting. Also, all of the talks that we are giving will be recorded and uploaded to the website, and you can find them on the top right corner of the page. Now, the website is being updated by Josh and I, so if you want anything updated or changed on that, you could flick us a message, or you could go straight through Deluxe. Okay, the next thing. Now, this is a little tutorial for how to use GoToMeeting once you're actually on it. Now, on GoToMeeting, you can see on the bottom left, there is a turn microphone on and off. So if you click that, that will toggle your microphone. You have a camera button, and you can toggle your camera from that. So that's the one next to the microphone button. You won't need to worry about the screen button unless you're presenting. Now, at the top, and I want you guys to test this one out now, at the top, you might be able to see a drop-down box that says active cameras, or maybe it says everyone, or maybe it says who's talking. I want you guys to try clicking on that drop-down box, and can you click it onto active cameras? That way you won't see any of the blank people on your display, and it will instead show you guys just the people that have their webcams on. So maybe that's a little bit more interesting, and you get like a more zoomed in version of someone picking their nose maybe. So, all right, without any further ado, let's get stuck in. So the first thing we're going to look at in our Bubble Banter sessions, and that's session number 1 of 8, and that is why we think God exists. So let's get stuck in. 2020. So we're going to play a game. So I want everyone to have their microphone on for this one. So you guys remember how to turn on your microphones? Yeah, try and look around for that little microphone button. Yeah, nice. The Luxmores have got their button on. Fantastic. Okay, so when you guys think you know the answer, can you say your name and then I'll let you speak? So 2020 so far, guess the scare. So what are the scary things going on? I'm going to put a picture up. You say your name. 3, 2, 1. Oh. What's the scare?
David.
Oh, David, yeah, what do you think?
Coronavirus.
Fantastic. So one of the massive scares of 2020 is the coronavirus. Next. Oh, this one's a little bit harder. Why not level up the difficulty?
Reese.
Can't hear anyone. Reese, I heard Reese before on.
I'm going to go Australian fires.
Fantastic, Reese. It is the Australian bushfires. And are you ready for the next one? Oh, let's up the difficulty.
Iran.
Ooh, who said that? Is Quran in the chat? Wait.
It's a chap from Iran.
Oh, it is a chap from Iran. Fantastic. His name, and I can't pronounce it properly, sorry, is Qasim Soleimani. And he was the Iranian Major General. So he was the second in charge of Iran, and he was taken out by a drone strike. And that was just recently in 2020, which a lot of people on the internet thought was going to cause World War III. So people were freaking out about that. Okay, the final one for 2020. Where are we? Good luck. What is this, and what does it mean?
Josh,
Josh, what do you reckon it is, Josh?
we are going back to the dark ages if we're not careful.
Ooh, yes. And what's some buzzwords for that? Dark ages because of
Recession, Great Depression, everything. Yeah.
every economist. Sorry, what was that?
Economic downturn.
Yeah, nice. Economic downturn. Okay, so everyone's freaking out in 2020 because all of these crazy things are happening around us, right? That graph on there is actually a graph of the oil prices. So it's the oil prices dropping because of a failed OPEC alliance and coronavirus, and it's really going to do crazy bad things for our economy, the global economy. So, sorry. Okay, anyway, let's move on to the next slide. Oh, that's not meant to be the next slide. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to Josh and Reese now. Could everyone else please mute their microphones? And actually, if you could all turn off your cameras so you can see a bigger picture of Josh and Reese. So if everyone can turn off their cameras, make sure you're set to view active cameras, and then you should see a bigger picture of us three that still have our cameras available. Okay. Leo's going to be helping us out with some answers by the look of it. Okay, so I got a question for you, Josh. How worried are you about 2020 so far?
I am, I guess, a normal amount of human worry to some extent. Those things you've got listed, there's yeah, they're all sort of in some ways a little bit tragic, and they're all a little bit terrifying as well. But I guess I'm also kind of fascinated by it all. It's been a pretty epic year. The fascination comes from, I mean, everything's been said, right, around coronavirus. Let's be honest. There's no point in going through those sort of statistics, as many as there are.
I'll give you one statistic.
One statistic. Pretty much every country in the world is printing money at the moment to keep their economies afloat. That's not a statistic as much as it is. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, but it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating in terms of the decision making that's going on from people right in your street right through to the leaders of all these countries. It's decision making like we've never seen before. So I find that fascinating how people are reacting. It's kind of like the science fiction sort of thing going on, but I think the decision making is beyond that as well. And I guess it's fascinating how fragile everything is. And again, that some people might see that as tragic, but I guess I just sort of see it as fascinating at this point.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Reese? Are you a bit scared coming into 2020 after seeing these things taking place?
Yeah, look, I'd have to agree with Josh. It is fascinating. I mean, I've got a real passion for nature, right? So when I see things like Australia burning, or even recently the Amazon on fire, or these earthquakes or locust plagues in Pakistan and Africa, for instance, it's like the world itself has just gone crazy at the moment. So it kind of puts you in a state of mind. It's like, what, something big is going on, isn't it? And you know, if nature itself is in this really weird state, it's like nothing controls nature but our influence, or you know, if you believe in God, God has some influence over it, right? So what is actually happening? What's this all coming to? So it makes me think a lot about that, you know. What are my priorities? What am I doing? What's all this reminding me of and telling me to start doing, you know?
Right. Now, I realize at the end of both of your answers, you sort of wrapped it back around to being like, I realize the world's going through this, but because of God or because of the bigger picture, you didn't seem overly worried. So my question is, how would your answer maybe be different if you didn't believe in something bigger than yourself, if you didn't believe in God? And Jackie, can I get you to turn off your camera, please?
Who you want first, mate?
I will go with Reese.
It's yeah, that's a really good question, Zach. It's funny you say that because I found myself even a month ago looking at some really good investment opportunities that were coming up for me personally, and I was just super keen for that. It seemed to be going really well for me in the future, and then all the stuff starts happening, and it's like if I didn't actually have a religious background, I would be absolutely panicking. I'd be one of those people out there getting toilet paper and butter and eggs and just
Right.
freaking out, you know? So life to me, if I didn't believe in God, would be absolutely different. I'd be worried about where my money's gone, what my job's going to do, what I'm going to do with my car, for instance. And that's even for me as a person who doesn't have a house, I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, and yet I feel my worries would just be really gnawing away at me. And yet
Yeah.
having God in the background is like it just gives you so much peace and security, you know?
Right. Right. Cool. Thanks. What about your thoughts on that, Josh? If you weren't a believer of God, how would you maybe see things differently?
It's kind of weird, isn't it? I guess when you have believed in God for a while, it sort of takes over your mentality. So it's hard to put yourself in that perspective. But I guess it's back to kind of that fascinating versus terrifying thing, right? Like I think
Yeah. Yeah.
fascination comes from, oh, where's this going? What's the end game for this? And kind of being more intrigued by it. Terrifying being, if you're terrified, you're really anxious about the end game and where this is going. It's kind of two different approaches to potentially the same thing. But I think
Yeah.
overall, I probably just feel sad. I think
Right.
seeing how fragile we are, how exposed we are, how vulnerable we are as people, and what's happened, I'd just be so confused and like, is this all there is? And I'd be sad by that in a sense that you know this could be it potentially. I know that's pretty grim, but for some people it's reality. And I think, yeah, I think I would be looking for something maybe at this point. I would hope I would
Right.
be. I feel like I'm a pretty normal, inquisitive sort of person. So yeah, I think I may be searching at this point for a bit more meaning to what the heck's going on in this place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. All right. Thank you very much for those answers. What we're going to do now is I saw two cool pieces of street art that capture the contrast I'm trying to get across. So this whole somebody that does believe and has hope in something far more versus somebody that maybe comes into a situation like this and just freaks out and sort of gives up. So I got this one here. Let's go. Whew. All right. So for a lot of Christians, this situation won't be overwhelming because there is always a hope that they are clutching onto. There's something greater. There's something far beyond all of these almost meaningless things that are happening in the world. Little contrast piece for you. Whereas some other people that are only in this world may be stuck in a position like this. What they're going to live their life, they get caught up in this, and then they die. That's it. Right? So what we're going to do next is I'm going to ask some questions to somebody else, and I'm going to ask the question, why do you believe? What is your reason for belief? So this person here goes by the Mad English Scientist, PhD. This is Dr. John Popel, and he works at the, I had it written down somewhere, the Stanford Synchrotron Radiation Light Source. So this guy here, John Popel, recently made a 15-minute video that shows us why he, as a light physicist, believes that there is a greater power and why he has faith. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link into the chat box for anybody that is technically savvy, if I can write in the chat box. Everyone write something. All right, I don't seem to be able to do that right now. If someone could find that link, I'll send it to you on Messenger or something. So what we have here is I also have the video ready to play via GoToMeeting, but it might come across a little bit laggy. So it's going to be a 15-minute video. So if you want to Alt-Tab and type into Google John Popel WCF, you will be able to watch the video on your computer at higher quality. Thank you for whoever just linked that. Josh has put the link in the chat bubble, and if you want to watch that link and just meet us back in the GoToMeeting straight after it's finished, it'll be better quality for you. So for everyone else, let's have a look at this. Is that sound coming across?
Can you turn it up, Zach?
Is it playing but not loud?
It's very quiet.
I think you might have to unplug your headphones, Zach. It's
I had an issue with this. No. Try it.
To explore the world around me. For that reason, my only career has been in research physics, and for the same reason, I've devoured a range of spiritual literature. I remain a keen student of the Bible, and I have legal qualifications in Christian ministry. Now, many assume that these two pursuits are going to clash head-on, but that's never been true in my experience. As a physicist, I fully embrace the concept of the scientific method to learn about the universe, and as a spiritual person, I would never be so narrow-minded as to insist that the scientific method is the only rational means by which we can perceive reality. Rationalism itself will reveal logical boundaries to scientific inquiry without in any way diminishing its method, as we shall see. Scientific method consists of observing physical effects impartially, under controlled conditions, making the minimum number of assumptions beforehand, and, ideally, reproducing these effects. In this way, using this method, science can teach us how the universe operates, from the immense astronomical scale all the way down to the subatomic. That said, not all accepted science has come from using scientific method. Cosmology, for example, which is the study of the origin of the universe, actually cannot derive from the scientific method. Scientists believe that the earliest subseconds of the universe contained up to 11 dimensions, magnetic monopoles, and an inflation of energy of almost incalculable magnitude. Obviously, none of these postulates are reproducible. None have ever been performed in a lab. In fact, none have ever even been observed. That doesn't discredit those ideas per se, but even the ardent rationalist must confess that to believe in this theory of the origin of the universe is, ironically, not a product of scientific method, but actually an article of faith. One of science's biggest triumphs is showing how mechanisms can operate through their inherent properties, without the need for supernatural forces or magical effects. Ancient religions that claimed that objects work because they had miniature spirits inside them, they've been disproven and dispelled. Yet it's this very advance that causes many to conclude
Zach, we lost the audio.
have been designed to work in the way that they do, or whether they've somehow self-organized or self-assembled. Figuring out how something works does not logically preclude any chance that it was designed to work that way in the first place. Take an airplane, for example. An airplane is able to fly because of the cross-sectional shape of the wing. It was a Dutch mathematician, Daniel Bernoulli, who figured out the correct shape that meant that as the airplane or the wing traveled forward, there'd be a pressure differential developed above and below the wing, and that would itself shove the plane into the air. This principle was first successfully exploited, as you may know, by the Wright brothers in North Carolina at the beginning of last century. Now let's suppose we have a witch doctor and a scientist who both observe the plane flying. The witch doctor claims that it's the disembodied spirits of the Wright brothers somehow infused in the metal which keeps the plane in the sky. The scientist, by contrast, uses scientific method to study the observable facts. She notes the weight and velocity of the plane, the pressure above and below the wing, and so forth. The scientist observes no disembodied spirits, and yet she's able to explain how the plane flies entirely through natural means. She concludes that there are no spirits lurking within the plane, which is true. She concludes that the witch doctor holds an incorrect view of the universe, which is also true. But were she to conclude that this proves the Wright brothers never existed, or Bernoulli never existed, she would be flat wrong. Yet this is exactly the mistake in logic that people make when they say science has proved that God cannot exist. The ability to explain mechanisms through natural phenomena does not prove or disprove whether an external intelligence designed them beforehand. Similarly, in my own scientific research, we developed a drug delivery system, which is a gel that has tiny little spherical molecules with the drugs on the inside. The idea is that you inject this gel under the skin, and then as the gel dissolves, the drugs can bleed out over weeks or months. And it's designed to be used with patients who aren't mentally capable, perhaps, of taking their own drugs reliably. We basically synthesized a bunch of molecular sticks. Now, they're hydrophobic on one end, which means they repel water, and they're hydrophilic on the other end, which means they attract water. And then we put the drug on the hydrophobic end. All we now have to do is take all these molecular sticks and throw them into water. And because the hydrophobic ends try and hide from the water, they cause themselves to assemble into these perfect little spheres with all the drugs on the inside. Here's the point. Humans can't physically manipulate molecules. They're too small. So if a scientist impartially observes our gel, and he knows everything about the universe, but he doesn't know about hydrophobic and hydrophilic behavior, he's going to conclude there's no way we could have built that gel. It must have come together by chance or some other way. But we had caused those tiny spheres to come together at a scale that we couldn't manipulate. We had achieved the design that we always had in the first place. It didn't look like we could have built that gel, but we had. So, what have we learned? We've seen that figuring out a natural functional system cannot logically determine whether that structure or system was designed. Science reveals a mind-boggling complexity of mechanisms at every length scale that exists. And logic insists that as complexity increases, then the probability of it being designed also increases. If any wing shape can fly, for example, then it's a lot more likely that planes can develop by chance. But science has shown beyond question, to the contrary, that our universe is almost immeasurably intricate. And this intricacy is only the beginning of the problem of believing in an undesigned world. Beyond the intricacy of natural systems, there's also a delicacy of balance of those systems, which are required for any of it to exist. Many of these balances are exactly what they need to be for life to exist, and so clearly the probability of this happening by chance gradually whittles away. At the largest length scale, we know astrophysics shows us that if the Earth is just a couple of % closer to the sun, then all the water will boil off and all life dies. But if that same Earth is a couple of % further away from the sun, why, it's too cold for life to even begin. If the Earth spins just a little bit faster, there are disastrous Coriolis winds that'll destroy everything. Yet if it spins a little bit slower, the difference in temperature between daytime and nighttime becomes lethal. Similarly, the degree of oxygen has to be exactly right. It must be high enough to sustain life, obviously, but it must be low enough so that the entire planet doesn't spontaneously combust. The actual value that we have, which is about 20.9%, sits exactly within that tiny window. At the lab where I work, I myself installed oxygen deficiency monitors for protection because there's a lot of strange gases about. And they're set to trigger at 19.5% and 23%, small window. Because at 19.5%, humans will faint and suffocate and die. But at 23%, even the tiniest spark could cause a huge fire or a lethal explosion. And those small windows of acceptability pale into insignificance when we step down and start considering our universe on the molecular or atomic scale. All life on Earth is based on the atom carbon. And the probability of a carbon atom coming together requires the ground state energies of those merging nuclei to match such that the chances of it happening purely randomly is 1 in 10 to the 16. And 10 to the 16 means a 1 with 16 zeros behind it. And stepping down to the subatomic level gets more demanding still. For stars to exist, and therefore for us to have any life, because our stars are the factories for all our elements, for stars to exist, the ratio between the strong magnetic force, which is one of the 4 fundamental forces of the universe, and the electromagnetic force has a tuning delicacy of 1 part in 10 to the 40. That's a 1 with 40 zeros behind it. The perfection of these balances is statistically absurd if our universe is undesigned. In my judgment, it requires nothing short of blind faith to believe that this could have happened by chance. And blind faith doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't appeal to my rational mind. Frankly, in my opinion as a scientist, the probability of the universe forming by chance, by random interactions, is as close to 0 as one can reasonably get. Let's take an analogy. Imagine a tornado goes through a scrapyard. Could you believe that this tornado would assemble by random chance and random interaction a fully formed Boeing 787 plane? Fully fueled, fully upholstered, painted perfectly in the colors of, let's say, Virgin Atlantic, with all of its aeronautical elements perfectly contoured, and all of its software systems fully updated to their latest levels and functional. I'd like to think that in any reality, any rational mind that came across that plane in the scrapyard would say that plane has clearly been designed, built, and brought here. And I'd like to believe that no rational mind would wander through that scrapyard and see the plane and say, wow, it must have been really windy. Now, one might think, but there's been billions of years. Surely anything is possible by random chance in that length of time. By no means. The estimated age of the universe is a mere 10 to the 17 seconds. That's not reasonably enough time for even a protein, let alone a self-replicating cell, to be constructed, if the only thing to construct it is random chance in an expanding, unthinking, barely populated space. And not that this first cell or this first protein would survive to achieve anything without the rest of an ecosystem entirely around it to make use of its existence. Science shows us that the ecosystems in which we exist are highly interdependent, meaning it requires many factors and many conditions to come together simultaneously for any part of that system to survive. And this places even higher demands on the probability of an undesigned or accidental existence. Not only that, but there are actually things in this universe we can observe which seem contrary to the idea of undesigned development. Think, for example, about human altruism or human aesthetics. In many species, parents are prepared to sacrifice their lives to keep their children alive, and that makes good sense for survival. But humans also show a propensity for children to sacrifice themselves for their parents, and that is counterproductive to the survival of the species. Similarly, if predators are hunting, then it's that varietal of the species which is distracted by aesthetics, for example, distracted by the beauty of a sunset, which is most likely to be caught, which is least likely to survive and reproduce. Now, a designer that values aesthetics and values altruism might deliberately cause them to exist, but development through random chance favoring survival would discard them. And yet, here they are. So the rational mind is now in a position to issue a challenge. How is this universe possible without intended design when it demonstrates both intricacies and a delicacy of balance of those intricacies seemingly beyond statistical probability? The only answer appears to be, well, we're unbelievably lucky. I'm sorry, that's blind faith. Both science and spirituality oppose that answer. Some suggest there could be an infinite number of universes, and that would allow even the unlikely versions to exist. Okay, problem is, that doesn't really change the question. Even if one merrily wheels in trillions and trillions of universes, the question only changes from how is this universe possible to how is it that we exist in this one universe, which of all the trillions of universes is pretty much the least likely. Again, the only answer is we're unbelievably lucky. And I agree, it's unbelievable. That's why I don't believe it. That's how I end up where I am. I believe this universe has been intentionally designed. This is a rational statement. It is fully consistent with my scientific education, and it underpins my reasoned faith. The statistical impossibilities of the heavens demands this, and therefore, by the same token, they testify to the existence of a highly skilled designer. Most importantly of all, I arrive at this conclusion not in spite of scientific method and rational deduction, but precisely because of them. Thank you.
Can't hear you, mate. You got to plug back in.
Hello.
There we go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I really enjoy that video. That's my second or third time round watching it. I would highly recommend watching it again as well, because there's some pretty big ideas in there, and he covers a lot of different reasons why he has faith. And I think it's just a really well-made video that's worth checking out again. So we've looked at the reasons that John Popel believes, but I'm interested, Josh and Reese, what are the reasons for your beliefs? So I'm going to start with Josh, and I've got an infographic I grabbed from him earlier. I'm just going to chuck that up.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. Yeah, so I guess I take a bit more of a holistic view. I'm still learning to use the word holistic. I don't know about anyone else, but it's one of those funky sort of new age words. Anyway, my thing with faith is that it's a bit of a continuum. So this is my example of a bit of a continuum that people might move back and forth on at any point in their life, including people that think they believe. They will sort of edge back and forth over this. I'm not going to go through all of it, but obviously we've got the orange side there, which is, you know, people that think life's fine, leave me alone, I'll do my thing, not a big problem, right through to the God is real, what do I do about this knowledge, which is John, the person that we've just heard speaking. And between that, there's a whole lot of questions, which John certainly raised some of. I guess he kind of covered some of the maths side of it, some of the science side of it. For me personally, you're asking me, mine is made up of a bit of all of this stuff. And I guess I float on this continuum sometimes. I look at, morals. Have we just made these things up? And, what's wrong with murder? Maybe that's actually fine to do. Why are we even, right through to, we've got these emotions, we've got this human connection that we can't explain. All these things, if you read that slide, that kind of start to piece together towards okay, well, this can't just be life and that's it. Leave me alone,
Right, yeah. Awesome. I quite like that image. Is that a homemade one there?
That is homemade, yes. You are
That's
all welcome
beautiful.
to it. I might develop it some more, actually.
Maybe we'll dedicate a tab on the website to that. Everyone could use that as their desktop, maybe. So Reese, I grabbed an image off you as well. I think this is a photograph you may have taken earlier, so let's chuck that up.
It is indeed. That's one I took when I was overseas.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think you got your skyline just about level as well. Sorry.
Tell you what, the sun's all around the world, isn't it? This is one of the things that gives me reason to believe. And as I said before, nature is one of my biggest passions, and it's what sort of drives me in life. And if I believe in the Bible, God has said that things like the sun and the moon or the stars in the sky, all these things are symbols and indications of Him and existence, even of promises to Israel and to people that are faithful to Him. So if I wake up in the morning and I see the sun come up, or if I look out at the stars tonight and I see the moon, there are all these natural indications that, yep, it's still there, it's still happening, it's still functioning. And if I believe in that, and I believe in God and that God made these things, then what He has attached to those same natural things must surely happen as well. So that gives me absolute reason every single day.
Yeah, that's just incredible. All of nature seems to be like that, doesn't it? So as you guys might be able to see now, there's all sorts of great reasons why you should believe in God. And actually, like what John Popel put it, it seems almost counterintuitive to not believe in God anymore. It seems like that's a bigger leap of faith. It's like what Josh said, these morals that are all around us. We have these emotions, this connection. And then Reese says, you look around and nature is just incredible. So it seems pretty logical, I would say, to believe in God. And so I guess that's our conclusion. But then the question arises, and that question is, oh, there's a fancy pants picture. Here's our architect. So the question is, what does that mean for us? What does it mean? So now that we've decided that, yeah, it's rational, it's logical to believe in God, what does that mean? What are the advantages? So I'm going to look at what I think are 4 huge advantages just to introduce the next talk. So number 1 is that God created us, right? And He wants to have a relationship with us. Number 2, the Bible has this power to help us grow. We can transform and improve ourselves through biblical teaching. We have this new hope. Death isn't the end anymore. There's this chance of resurrection through Jesus Christ so that we can live even after we die. And finally, God has in the Bible this amazing promise of a kingdom that's going to be on earth in the future. So there's some pretty awesome reasons to believe in God, but I'm going to leave that until next week. So next week, we are going to look at God's plan for us. Oh, no, not next week, sorry.
Thursday?
It is on Thursday night at 7 p.m. So Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m., that is when you can meet us for Bubble Banter, Bible-based belief. And that's all for now. You can turn your cameras back on. Thanks very much, Josh and Reese, for being involved tonight. Oh, Ron was secretly there the whole time?
Oh.
Unbelievable.
Excellent.
This
I'll add it on
conference will now be recorded.
So does anybody have any questions, which is what Josh just asked? Sorry. Anyone else got questions, comments, reasons that they believe? Floor's open.
They've all got their mics off.
Aha, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I going back to John's stuff. it is. Yeah, I just kind of feel like sometimes it is taking that time, which again, we've all got time right now, right? To kind of put the pieces together. And John is probably one of the smartest people that some of us know, and can come up with this stuff based on just huge volumes of molecular research. We don't need to go to that level necessarily, but there is just little bits and pieces along our sort of journey that we will hopefully pick up, and there's times like now that we can actually think of those things. So yeah, we're still hoping to get John on for a session, by the way, so keep trying him.
Yeah, to me, one of the reasons that people today don't want to believe or don't believe in God because of any research they've done is because of science. Science has turned them off God, and the fact is that John Popel is a scientist and a believer in God. I mean, and I mean, we all know. Well, I know that most of us know John. He's a very clever man. But at the end of the day, what he's done is he's able to see how science actually, if you like, supports the notion that there is a God. And so, you'll find that science or scientists are very divided about whether or not they believe in God. But but the relationship is that if you're a scientist and you want to disprove God, then you'll go out of your way to try and do that. And I think that those are the kind of scientists that we need to be very sort of wary of. That the Richard Dawkins of this world who really their only reason to exist is to try and disprove that God exists. And so it's always helpful, I think, to have someone like John Popel who's got all that understanding and knowledge of science and is able to see through that there is a creator. I think it's fantastic.
So
Funny you say that, Dave. I've seen, sorry, Zach.
Go on.
I've just seen quite a few comments around that same sort of feeling at the moment, like the Pope going and trying to pray or put a blessing on the world about this whole thing happening now. And people are like, nah, prayers ain't going to help because it's the scientists and vaccines. That's what's going to fix the world. So straight away, it's this division between science and religion that's just happened.
We've got a comment from Steve Brinkman, and he says that Psalm 25 verse 14 says, "The Lord confides in those that fear him," and his comment with the verses that God has made us personal friends. So thanks for that, Steve.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment on Reese's comment there about scientists are out there saying we need to find a vaccine and that's going to save us. When you really think about it, Jacinda's message out there that stay at home, save lives, and there's a lot of talk about how many lives can be saved. Not to be negative, at the end of the day, there are no lives that are going to be saved through this. There might be a prolonging of life, there might be a preserving and extending of someone's life, but no science has discovered the saving of life. There is only one place you can find the way to save life, and maybe that is a matter of staying at home, but you probably need to open up your Bible and seek God, because he's got the answer to saving life as opposed to preserving life.
Nice. Has anyone else got any questions or comments?
Just kind of going over what John said again, I think the difference, his angle was a lot around attacking the scientific principles or methods that scientists are using, right? Like, it's not good science to be operating in the probabilities that he was referencing. And I guess that's kind of where he's coming from. He's not kind of trying to dispute it on whether this is this old or whatever. It's purely just that's not how you do science, which is kind of an interesting angle. I like it.
Sophie, do you want to turn on your mic?
Maybe change it up.
My main reason for believing is actually based on the character of Christ. And interestingly enough, there's actually another WCF video made by a lady, and she talks about the character of Christ. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm probably going to watch it after this, or sometime in isolation anyway. So I think that Jesus's character was just so crazy for the time that he was born into, for him to act like that and be so revolutionary on so many fronts of humanity, and to set his example of doing everything completely backwards to how humans choose to do things, and that he was able to bring this huge revolution to most of the world today is crazy. So yeah, I like Jesus as my proof.
Can you hear me?
So, yeah.
I was just going to ask if people had any examples from the Bible of faith growing from starting at a place of fear. So we've got a lot of people who are quite fearful at the moment, and what are some good ways to speak to people, to communicate our faith to people that are scared at the moment? I wondered if anyone had any good examples of how we talk to people like that, because my faith has not waned through this, but I know other people's may, and I know we're also being given an opportunity to speak to people about where this might be their starting point of faith. So, are there any good examples or ways do you think we could be speaking to people?
My one, great question, Sophie. Thanks for that. Something I've thought a little bit about recently is kind of the provision that we may be struggling with now, right? Like some people are, struggling for breath. Literally, there's people dying of this. We know that Jesus' spirit is something that we have in us if we choose to accept it. We have breath from Jesus. We have breath from God. We are alive because of God. Jesus says he's the bread of life. Jesus says that he is the water. He also says that he's the light of this world. We can get everything from Jesus, the things that we are starting to miss in the world at the moment, that people are concerned that they're going to lose. And then the big kind of follow-up of all that is that Jesus will also provide an abode or a place to be in the future as well. Again, something people worry about. So I kind of like that. It's not necessarily entry level sort of talk, because you've got to kind of explore the Bible to find those different things that Jesus says. I can be the light for you if you choose to accept me. I can be the bread for you if you choose to accept me. But it fills the human need. I might go into that a little bit more and talk.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of examples that immediately spring to my mind of people who had severe adversity in their lives and came through it. I mean, the classic one for me is Job. And, without going through the whole story, we know that at the very beginning, he questioned God about why he was being treated in the way, all his wealth had gone, his wife had died, all his flocks, all his wealth had gone. And then through a series of conversations through his friends, which were really of no help to him at all, but at the end of it, he came through. He actually thought it through I would call it a patient understanding of what God is all about. And we know that the end of Job was much, much greater than the beginning, because of the faith that he managed to actually store up. And of course, the other one is Joseph, isn't it? Where he was sold by his brothers and spent many years in Egypt. And he must have wondered, how this was all going to work out. And we know how it all worked out. Once again, here's a man who had absolute faith in God that he was going to, that God was going to save him, and he did. But it didn't happen immediately. And I think that's the thing that we all have to realize, that God doesn't do things in the time frame that mankind thinks he should do things. He does things in his own time frame. And I think those are some of the things that that people need to understand that, because I've heard some people on the radio saying, well, how could God allow this to happen? Well, number one, it's not God that's allowed to happen. It's something that man has created himself. But that God is allowing it, I think, to happen to bring mankind to its senses, as it were, and so that it might actually turn to Him. But so therefore, people have to realise that there are no shortcuts. A bit like what Ron was saying the other day in his talks, that there is no shortcuts in any of this thing. If you want to learn about these things, you have to do the hard yards, really, and that's what God is actually wanting us to do.
I once bought a sparrow. There was a dude on a waterfront selling sparrows in a cage, and you could pay money to let the sparrow out of the cage, and then you could let the sparrow go free. Like, it cost me like less than $1 for the sparrow. And we're told in the Bible that God cares about the sparrows. Not one sparrow falls to the ground without God taking notice of that. So is it the comfort that and God cares for sparrows, how much more he would care for us? So I guess you get a level of comfort when you have an almighty, all-powerful creator who's always watching over you and really, really cares about you. So I guess that's a sense of comfort from that. I think you get a discount when you buy 2 sparrows as well.
Was that on Lake Virginia and Wanganui? Sounds like saying that.
It was actually on the waterfront in Cambodia, and what they do is they clip the wings of the sparrows, so they just go and collect them up afterward anyway. So, sorry.
Can I make a comment here? I like what David said, but if we did the readings this morning and we come to the story of Kadesh Barnea and what the children of Israel had gone through all the time in Egypt, they'd seen the plagues, they'd seen the Red Sea, all the things that they'd seen, and they come to Kadesh Barnea, and what do? And so we look around us in the world today, and I don't think it's so much that people don't believe that there's a God. They don't want to believe that there's a God, because the moment that they've got to believe, they say they believe, then they've got to do something about it. And that's what I think they're scared of.
And Leo, that actually matches perfectly to Steve's comment that he just made. Romans 1 verses 18 to 20. Those who don't believe in creation are without excuse. God's qualities are clearly seen from what he has made. So back to you, Leo, if you've got more to say.
No, that's it.
We will cover a little bit of that in session 3, which will be next Tuesday, I think. Being part of a community of believers, and yeah, why that's the next step really to answer the call.
All right. So should we end the recording there?
I reckon.
Let's do it.